Okay, let's see if this will work. So I'm recording what I'm doing on the MacBook, but not what's happening on the iPad, which is where I'll see people if they're talking. And not entirely sure how well this will work, but so it used to be the case that when we were researching simple problems, hello Naomi, that it was sufficient to use single research methods, right? Because the problems we were researching were neatly encapsulated in silos, and they could very often be resolved by a single research method, and it was a question of what was the appropriate research method. So a great deal of, there was a sort of fascination with doing survey-based research in the social sciences for a long time because it produced quantitative results, and that was numbers, and that looked more scientific. And qualitative research, text-based research, mostly happened in the humanities, to a certain extent in politics, but didn't really happen formally. Where it formally happened, where qualitative research actually happened, was in disciplines like ethnography, where it was based heavily on observation and on field notes and on transcripts of field notes and on analyzing and encoding those. So what's happened now is that the problems that we tend to be looking at now in the contemporary world are more complicated and cannot be addressed within a single domain. They bring in specialists from a number of areas, and they require a number of different techniques, which means that most good research now is mixed. It has a little quantitative, some survey research is often necessary, some interviewing, some text analysis, some ethnographic field research. Observational field research is a big part of design thinking, which people nowadays are deeply in love with in terms of designing new products. Okay, so there's a triangle, right? Somewhere I may have a PowerPoint that is out, and I'll try to grab it. Is boom, 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 full screen. No, I'm looking for. I'm looking for a thing. I want to. No, I don't want that. I want to. More actions. Device meeting. Have we lost screen sharing? Have we lost screen sharing on? Oh no, we haven't. It's here. Share content. Right. Which one do I want? Not Teams. Yes, I want this one. Right. So sharing. Yes. That's not the screen I want. Yeah. This is really amazing. So the screen that I'm sharing is behind the screen, the window that I'm seeing on my desktop. Here we go. Right. What I wanted to do was and what I want to ask people to do, and I need to put together a little video on this and make it specific. But what I want people to do this week, interrupt me if you get lost here, but it's not that complicated, is use Google Forms to design an online survey. Now, in the section on online surveys, don't worry about last year's date, I'll change that. As you can see, our dates are very different this year to what last year's were. There's a link to the Community of Inquiry survey, which is an example of a very well done survey. Jumps out to there. Community of Inquiry is the framework, and there's a lot of notes about it, but you can download the survey. Boom, 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 and actually, yeah, we'll open it. No, we won't open it, right? I'll just save it. But it relates to people's understanding of the Community of Inquiry. Can I open that without losing the window? I can't. And as surveys goes, it's good because it's well designed. It asks questions about that whole Community of Inquiry thing, which you've seen last year, to do with how we have online conversations and the whole social presence, teaching presence, cognitive presence stuff, right? And it is a survey which has been used hundreds of times. And there's an enormous number of papers which produce the results out of it. So if you're really interested in seeing how a survey can be used Some of the research papers based on it, which are cited in the reference there, are very good. There's a couple of other slightly older things about designing surveys, right? One of the problems, there's two things with designing surveys. There's the functional, there's the technology. How do we build a survey? And then there's how do we ask interesting questions? So there's a couple of readings there about how we design surveys and how we ask interesting questions on them. You don't need to read both of them. Read both if you feel like it. And then the last link is how we do crosstabs in Google, because this is the hard part about questions. Okay. I think it's an example that has to do with pizzas, if I remember. And simple questions. It's all very well to ask a series of simple questions in a survey. But what you're really looking for, so you can ask simple questions like, what age are you? Do you like pineapple on pizza? Yes, no. But where it gets really interesting, for example, is where you ask two questions like, do you like pineapple on pizza? And let's say, what is your ethnicity? Okay, if you've got that in the demographics. So you can then cross-reference those two questions and see what the distribution of pineapple on pizza people is in terms of different ethnic groups. Is there a distinct difference? Or you could ask the gender identity question, although I'm not entirely sure if it would be relevant. The ethnicity one might be relevant because Italians, for example, if you have that as a category, might be very offended by the idea of pineapple on pizza. Whereas Americans might, well, it's not so much ethnicity as nationality, is it? Might be quite cool with the idea of pineapple on pizza. Well, let's not start talking about America this week, right? So that video shows how you cross-tabulate answers to see how different groups, how you can cross-tab two answers and see what how the results of one question map to another. Designing questions that will usefully give you an interesting result on a crosstab is not easy. Obviously, you're not designing one question, you're designing pairs of questions that go together to give you an interesting result. And that's, some people can do it very easily, some people can't. This is one of the questions. I mean, this is one of the things about quantitative research, which is that in terms of designing surveys and analyzing surveys, it's math. Not all of us are great math people, okay? It's very simple math. You can, with complicated survey tools, go beyond it and produce really fancy math. So that's the theory. Those two are the theory, and that's the analysis, which some of you may take to like ducks to water, and some of you will go, oh, I have no idea how to do this. So what you're going to do is, on the topic that you've picked, I hope you picked a topic by now. Where am I going? Google, right? So on Google, up here on the new, you have docs, sheets, slides, and you have forms. Okay. And actually, there's probably a whole bunch of tutorials on how to do this online, but I may record a short one. So it gives you a form. Okay, and it starts you off with the first question. Now, here's the thing. Right, immediately you're presented, and it's a good idea to work this out on paper first. I can see the difference between surveys where somebody just sat down with a form and wrote questions, and someone where somebody actually thought about this a little bit ahead of time. So let's, I'm just trying to think of okay, well, pizza, right? Simple question, and it gives you some suggestions. So I wonder what, oops, spelling. So it can be a multiple choice. Now, this is the interesting bit, right? Okay, look at all these options. The simplest one, it can be a short answer, right? It can be a paragraph. The problem with that is that generates text that you've got to code. We're not really interested in those right now. It can be multiple choice. Now, or check boxes. Here's the thing about these two, okay? In programming terms, these are actually called radio buttons. And one of them, multiple choice, I think I always have to check, only allows one answer. Okay. Whereas the other allows more than one answer. Right. Drop down, we won't worry about drop. Oh, I didn't mean to make it a drop down. You can ask people to upload a file. You don't want to do that. It can be a linear scale, which is the 5-point Likert scale, right? Or a grid, multiple choice or checkbox grid, which are quite complicated to analyze. Okay, let's just make it multiple choice. So option 1 is yes, and add another option. Option 2 is no. Option 3 is don't know. It's always a good idea now to have a don't know. Here's something else about survey design. There's a difference between don't know and don't care. I'm putting that quite superficially, but particularly on ranking scale questions, okay? Do we want to make it a required question? I don't think so. So there's a question. No. Then, so there's a bunch of other things. You can add dividers and you can do a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just going to add a question. How much do you approve of pizza? Okay. Oh, I have an interesting other question. Now, this is a how much, and I'm going to make this a Likert scale. They call it a linear scale here, but it's called Likert. And it can be 1 to 5. Yes, that's the traditional one. So now label 1 is never. Label 2 is no. Oh no, wait a minute. What is that? 1 to 5? Why is it not doing? They've changed this. Okay, I'm going to see how this turned out. It used to be that you had to fill in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the options. What happens if I do this? That doesn't work. Interesting. I'm going to preview it. Oh, it did. Right. Okay. So it's made it easier. You now have the two different things. Do you approve of pineapple pizza? Yes, no, don't know. Never, always. Right. This is not necessarily an improvement. It saves you some work. But the problem here is, what is 3? This is the don't know, don't care question. Is 3, I don't care? And if 3 is, I don't care either way, then you have no option here. Oh, this is a terrible change, because you do not now have, if it's a question about knowledge, you have no option, no options are terrible. You have no scope to put in a button here for someone to click, I know nothing about this. I've never eaten pizza in my life. There are people who've never eaten pizza in their life. But it'll do it for you automatically. Fair enough. Okay, so now I have, okay, plus new question. Last question that I'm going to add. Okay, and I'm going to make this, a checkbox grid, right? So row 1 is pineapple. I don't know how they're going to, they've changed this now. And row column is, I know someone who baked a brack using spice bag seasoning. And row pineapple. So I'm going to guess this is pineapple. Never. Okay, they haven't operated this. So yeah, here we go. P-I-N-E-8, pineapple sometimes, pineapple always. I'm going to keep it simple. And this is spice bag brack. Never. it being Halloween, and this could be a it's the best, right? So let's just make this question clearer. Would you eat? Okay, and it's checkbox grid, right? So let's hit the preview again. It will generate a new preview. Let me get the old preview go away, and here we go, right? So now you've got, do you approve of pineapple on pizza? No. How much do you approve of pineapple on pizza? Never. And then here's the question. Would you eat? Well, pineapple, never. Would I? Yes, I would try spice bag brack, okay? If you were going to always have pineapple. Now, and this is the difference between the checkbox and the radio buttons, the roundy ones, right? This is a question where you really only want one of those 9 squares filled in. Because the answer here is you either want an answer about the combination, right? So you don't want people to have multiple choices here. I made the wrong choice on this one because some people might look at this and go, no, I would never eat spice bag brack, but I would always have pineapple on my pizza, right? So you really only, we want to change this. I wonder if I can change this. This is another problem with, so what happens if I change this to a multiple choice grid? Oh, it works. So we make that go away. Leave page. And we go to this and go back and do the preview again. So now I would try this, and I cannot answer it. If I answer something, I shouldn't be able to do that. Yeah, on each row. Okay, it's not exactly as precise as I want, which means I would have to go back and change that question, or I would have to make 2 questions out of it. And there is a point where I would then make it into 2 questions like this. Would you approve of pineapple on pizza? Would you ever eat a brack made with spice bag instead of regular seasoning? And then you can cross tab the 2 of those to get a table. And you could obviously have a demographic question at the beginning about, age, gender identity. The really hard question to ask on surveys, what has become a huge issue in questions on surveys, it used to be that you always asked, one of the first questions you'd asked on a survey was sex, male or female, boom. And that was historically, that was the case. Obviously, we now recognize it's a much more complicated issue. So you have to think about how many categories you want to include for, if you're asking a demographic question on gender identity. And the other question is it really relevant or interesting? I suspect there's a lot of old surveys where they didn't ask gender identity, where they asked sex instead of gender identity, and where you get some odd results in the responses because of the way the questions were framed. That the survey was not designed to take account of the full spectrum of people who were filling it in. I may be wrong, but that's that. Now, if you want to have people do your survey, right? So like pineapple on pizza, no, never. There we go. Right, submit. Okay, so submit. Boom. Submit another response. Pineapple on pizza, yes. Always. Sometimes submit. Okay. And right, so this is the screen where you're designing the form. If you want people to do the survey, and you share this URL, this is not the one that you want them to fill in. This is the one you want them to fill in. So this is the URL you want to copy, and boom, 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 boom. Chat. Hope I've got this right. There you go. So hopefully everybody's got access to the survey. What else you need to know is on the editing screen, this is where you see the responses. Right? And what it gives you, and this is cool, It gives you the graphs. This is great. You can just cut and paste these in. Here's the responses. It's fantastic. You don't have to worry about generating the responses. It's there, and you can even pop it out in a separate window. You can copy the chart. You can paste it in. My television is about to go off. Right. It's fantastic. It takes a lot of the heavy work out of it. If you design the questions properly, you'll get the graphics you want. And you won't have to do any more. And to be quite honest, since none of us are statisticians, you probably don't want to do any more. But if you do, it will create a spreadsheet untitled form responses, or yeah, let's leave. Okay, I'm going to have to, if I don't name this spreadsheet, I won't be able to find it and get rid of it. So we'll just create. So what you can do is give it its title, and it will create a Google Sheet with the date and time and the answers that people have put in. And where you've done that grid question, it actually takes the text, which if you're trying to do math on it is not necessarily the most useful, right? Because that you can't, how can you average spice bag sometimes? Well, you can't. But you can get it out as a sheet. Remember, this is a 5-point scale. So for this, you're going to want to count. Do you approve of this? Is just yes, no, so you can count, right? So these you can count. These you may have to recode as numbers. Okay, so if you want to, right, so this is hard. This is going to be equal to, where's my formula button? I'm actually going to, no, I'm going to take that off. I'm going to make this, why is my formula button not shining up? Interesting, here we go. No, I don't want this. Huh, strange. Right, I know how to do this. This is going to be equal to the count if, not count, but count if, then it wants me to specify the range. So here is the range. That's the range. Count if, now let me try and get me the help up here. Count if range, comma, criterion. So there's an example there. Count if A1 to A10 is greater than or equal to 20. So I want count if, and I need to put a comma on this. Count if, yes, I think this is right. And then I want to close the bracket, right? Is this correct? There was a problem. One or more close parentheses. Oh, it's fixed it for me, has it? Nope. Oh my God. I should have read the help. That should be right. Oh, except, oh, there it is. Yes, it has worked. Right. Okay. I eventually got the quotation marks. So what this does is it says count in this range from B2 to B5, how many things, how many times the word yes occurs. And it's 2. Now, so this whole thing about naming ranges is really important in Excel. If you can do this and understand how to name ranges, then you can learn to use Excel. If you can't, it's a threshold thing, right? People can do it, and the rest of the world are not accountants. That's the way it is. So it's useful to find out if you can. Now, here's the next hard thing. And if this doesn't record properly, I'm going to have to replicate this whole process to show people. But if I copy that cell and I paste it down here, Okay, so what's happened here, look at this. Here we go. Let's just blow this up, 200%. Right, give me, oh, it's not showing me. It's not blowing up the formula line. This one here is operating on B2 to B5, okay? This one, sorry, don't want to destroy it. Don't do that. This one is operating on B3 to B6. This equation is designed to count the values in this range, and this equation is counting the values in this range. Because I've copied the equation one cell down, so everything in it moves down one cell. And I'm still getting 2 because there's 2 yeses in this range. So I don't want to move it down. I actually want this to be B2 to B5, and I don't want them to count the yeses because what I want to count, in fact, here is not the yeses, but the no's. Oops. Boom. Right? So I can now count yes and count no's. You can use the same principle to count the number of answers, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this, which you can then turn into a graph. Now, unfortunately, this is very boring because I've got 2 yeses and 2 no's. So let's just change this. Hang on a sec. Let me just make sure I get the value right. Let's just change that. There you go. 3 yeses, 1 no. Okay, so that's more interesting, right? But the key to all of this is, can you create equations in Excel or any spreadsheet? Do you understand how to identify a range of cells, right? And how to make sure that if you copy the equation, that you edit the addresses so that it's pointing at the same range of cells. I mean, it's very handy if you had a bunch of questions that were the same. For example, well, this won't work, but if you had this one, you could copy this from here to here. And what it will do is it will check this range of cells, and you could copy it from here to here. And of course, there's no yeses in any of these, right? If I put a yes in here, I'll just put it in here, right? It'll tell me 1. Because there is indeed 1 yes in that range. So it swings and roundabouts. You can build an equation and copy it all across a whole line. It'll give you this, if the questions are the same, it'll allow you to do this, the analysis very quickly. You can even copy several equations. And in fact, if we just, for fun and bubbles, put in no and no here, you see, boom. So you can design your analysis, your questions, so that your analysis equations are pretty easy, actually. Now, taking this question and cross-tabulating them and making a pivot table out of it is much harder, right? So if you get stuck trying to do this on the analysis, then the, where is the thing? This cross-tabs in Google, forget it. In which case you ask someone who knows how to use Excel to do the analysis on it. So from our point of view, because we have, where did I put those responses? Unless you are a statistician, you design your questions so that you get your numbers out and you just take them as they are with the nice graphics. And if you need to go beyond that, unless you are good at maths and specifically good at stats, just don't go there, because the potential for messing up if you're not mathematically sharp or good at statistics is huge, okay? But the important thing for research, most real world research does not really mean political responses. You know, the opinion polling survey goes through the whole list of stuff on what party you vote for and what your age is and what your demographics is and all that sort of stuff. And it's just a succession of these, and it just produces a succession of this sort of stuff. So 99% of the survey-based research that people in the real world need to do can be done with some basic questions and the results that you get by default out of a Google survey. Google surveys, of course, are not the most secure way of doing opinion polling, but that's how it works. So there are more sophisticated tools for collecting survey data, but they cost bucket loads of money. This is sufficient to understand the principle, which is what I want you to do. So I want you, on the topic of your choice, to design a survey of about 10 questions. Don't worry about paragraphs, but certainly multiple choice checkboxes. Don't worry about drop downs. Scale grid checkbox, right? Use some of these useful question types. Go from simple questions to complicated. Don't worry about asking a lot of demographic questions. If you're asking age, do please remember to make enough age categories to include me, okay? I've actually had people who've designed surveys and their age categories have been, 12 to 18, 18 to 24, and that's it, right? So design a survey, look at the preview, share it. There will be a discussion thread I will update this, and there will be, so I will update this, and you can share the survey here, and then as many people as possible should do each other's surveys and see what sort of results you get. And we will see how well this works. And if it turns out that people have a huge amount of problems, then we'll come back over it and look at it and sort of answer the issues that arise, okay? But usually most people clip through this once and it's done and you know how to do a survey. And you can tick another box on your LinkedIn profile for useful skills that you have, okay? So that's it. I want to stop recording that, if I can remember how to. And there we go. Turn off the screen sharing. So that's what we're doing this week. Questions? Is anybody still there? I'm just looking at 7 sets of initials. Okay, thank you, Harry. I don't know if I had did I have a conversation with you lot 2 weeks ago about how the work was going in general? I think I did, didn't I? Yeah, I tried to go across all the classes and just make sure I was in touch with how people's workload was going. So if I did that, yes, George, they are. Yes, and you had a good one. I don't know how many others are out there. I'll have a look at that discussion thread and see how many other people have actually nailed down topics. And I might poke people about that and see how it goes. Yes. Has anybody figured out how to get profile pictures into Teams yet? No? I have, but I don't know how I did it. All right. I will. Okay. I will update the stuff on surveys maybe tomorrow morning, because I have the first years at 5 o'clock now, and then I have the MAs at 7, and push that out to everybody. And we will just keep battering on and stay warm, and don't stay up all night tomorrow night watching the US election. There's no point, because the results won't be up until Wednesday morning anyway. So let's just not sweat it too much. The sun will still rise on Wednesday morning, and you will still have work to do for me. Okay, let's leave it at that then. Oh, you could, yeah, you could share it with friends and family. Yeah, you could, absolutely. I mean, you can share it with anybody who's, if you're happy that it's good, you can share it as widely as you want to. Yeah. Okay. Let's leave it at that so I can get a cup of tea before I have to deal with the first years then. All right. Bye. Okay, I'm out of here.